Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the IMAA Insights and Innovations session for this wonderful Monday. Today, we have the amazing Christian Zavecz joining us. He is going to talk us through great minds, great brands. This is some research into 25 marketers comparing Australia into England's research as well. We're very lucky to have this because this was done for the first time ever in South by Southwest last week, and we are the first ones to see it. So no longer the Indies are the last to hear about it. We're hearing it one of the first in the country, and we're very, very lucky to do so. So, Zav, over to you, mate, to take things over.
All right. No, thanks for having us. Yeah, look, as Sam said, this was our latest research piece that we launched last week at South by Southwest. We told it at great minds, great brands, as it's sort of underpinned by some of Australia's best and brightest marketers and their perspectives on what it takes to build and manage an enduring brand. So what did the study entail? So we basically surveyed over 25 of Australia's leading marketers in September of this year, and that represented over 18 different categories, which was important because it enabled us to get a really holistic view of the market and also ensure that there was a broad cross-section of new, developing and established brands as well. But when we set out to do it, we didn't want to just understand what our perspective was. And through our association with Ocean Outdoor, they presented an opportunity. They had done a similar exercise earlier in the year. And for those that don't know Ocean Outdoor, they're one of the leading digital out-of-home innovators in the UK and Europe. And so they'd done that study early in the year, and we've had a close association with them for some while. So we saw the opportunity not to only do a bit of a pulse check on our market, but more importantly, just to explore what some of the nuances and differences exist between the two important markets in the world. So they too spoke to some of their region's leading marketers and the highest level of experience and expertise. And we wanted to also ensure that we sort of had a no holds barred view from our clients, and that there was no bias between the markets. So we made sure that the questions were exactly the same, and that everyone that responded had total anonymity as well. So what were those 5 questions? So initially we wanted to know what is the biggest challenge that they see in marketing today. Then sort of explore what are the 3 most important factors that they consider when allocating marketing investment. Then sort of take a more future look and see, what they think their biggest marketing related challenge is going to be over the next 24 months. What media channels do they believe that best deliver on these objectives? And then finally, it would have been remiss of us not to ask something that was specific to our channel. So in terms of digital out of home, what are the 3 most important attributes do you look for? So on to the first question. What do they see as the biggest marketing challenge today? Well, in the UK, there was a very clear story, as you can see here, and you can read some of the quotes there from some of the respondents, but it was overwhelmingly attention as their number 1 challenge. And so whilst, the capturing and maintaining of consumer attention is not really surprising as a challenge, the clear-cut nature of it really was. And it was particularly interesting when you started to then explore what the results were in Australia. So getting on to Australia, and attention again was important. It wasn't a singular most important, and it in fact formed part of a clear 3 themes that came through from our respondents. The first being around sustainable growth, the second unified measurement, and then the third attention. So getting on to the challenge of sustainable growth, which is, as I said, was very much at the forefront of responses. The ability or affordability of balancing short and long-term outcomes for brands really became what was coming through from respondents as a balancing act between quality and quantity. And again, this is nothing really new, but definitely I think the the strength of the responses and the amount of clients that sort of saw this as their major challenge was one that was a bit of a surprise to us. And it's reinforced globally. Like if you look at people like Les Binet, who's been an advocate for effectiveness, he was presenting in London just the other week saying that ROI is dangerous if we have an over-reliance on it. And he actually called it the death spiral of efficiency when it takes us away from long-term brand building and also our superpowers, things like creativity. So again, I think it's quite important. The second was unified measurement. Again, it's not an overly new challenge for our market, but one, given the industry's advancements in data and technology, it continues to keep it prominent in our clients' minds and thoughts. So, gaining that holistic understanding and really improving the quality of measurement was a theme that came through, from a number of our respondents here in Australia. And then on to the third, to attention, which, is our 21st century version of effective reach. Its importance is really about the industry elevating the need for quality, which in turn is fundamental for, driving effectiveness of their communication. So again, it was important, but it wasn't seen as a clear number one in Australia. Look, it's also an area that we've focused on, or focused our attention, to pardon the pun. But last year, we actually launched our global first out-of-home attention study, which many of you may have seen. And as part of that study, we wanted to understand the relative performance of out-of-home versus other digital media. And our partners, Amplified Intelligence, had previously found that 85% of high-scroll digital media fails to reach the minimum attention threshold of 2.5 seconds, which is critical for an ad to be potentially committed to long-term memory. So encouragingly for out-of-home, it showed that the results were actually flipped and that 89% of sites were either reaching or exceeding that particular threshold. On to the second question that we asked, which then sort of delved into what they saw were the three most important factors that they consider when allocating their marketing investment. So here we're showing a comparison. To the left is the UK, to the right is Australia, and a little bit different here in that there was some agreements in the first two. You think of the importance of reach at number one, the imperative of ROI at number two, but then you get to the third factor, and there was a bit of a take from the Australians versus the UK. In effect, Australia, has replaced the notion of how much in the UK with how well. From an attention perspective here in Australia, which, in turn speaks to the importance of quality and balancing traditional metrics. But not surprisingly, reach is still seen as the most critical. It's a long-standing and clearly still fundamental factor in everything that we do. So the fact that it is still striking the number one position really does reinforce, the imperative and the importance of channels that are able to deliver mass broadcast reach. And previously this was, the powerful attribute of many channels, most notably being TV. But as we all know, times have changed. So whilst out of home has always had the ability to reach mass audiences, these market changes have only increased, our relevance and importance in being able to generate not only broadcast audiences, but across a broad range of target audiences as well. But it wasn't all just about reach. So the other thing that we started to see from a lot of the respondents was, reach doesn't solve everything by itself. So this is where, you can see through some of these responses that, they're identifying that not all eyeballs are equal, and there needs to be an overlay of quality for them to be able to achieve their desired incomes. So on to our third question, which was a little bit more future focused. I know 24 months doesn't seem future, but I suppose it is nowadays. And so we asked, what is your biggest marketing related challenge over the next 24 months? So in the UK, AI was clearly rated on top, and this is understandable. It is a thing that we all know is current and real, and is forcing us to look at how things are done, and the need for adaptation and change. But in the UK, that was also joined with a degree of concern and, want for a better word, potential negativity amongst their respondents, which, when you look to Australia, was a bit different. So again, you would sort of say that AI came up as a theme, but it was a little bit more rounded, and you would sort of almost say with a much more positive perspective on how AI can assist them in achieving what they need to. And with that came sort of three micro challenges. And if you look at it, it's like, how can we utilize AI to scale, develop contextually relevant messaging without production budgets being, overspent and so forth. And then you sort of look at personalization and automation. How can we deliver the right message to the right consumers at the right time? So all media principles that aren't old, but talking about how AI can, if used properly, can assist in this new world that we're living in, where tech and data is definitely transforming the opportunities, to interact and to engage consumers. So as I mentioned, AI came up, but again, it wasn't the biggest challenge for our marketers compared to the UK. In fact, 54% cited that, brand differentiation, cut through, and distinctiveness were the most important factors for them. So again, it's interesting when you start to see, even from the first question, the importance of sustainable growth. They're brand related metrics, and there is a much more of a focus from our marketers versus that of the UK. And as AI narrows search, and it continues to change how people find, filter, and compare brands, out of home becomes even more important, particularly in driving that top of mind awareness and prompting consumers to ask AI about your brand, which is definitely something that we're starting to see through through studies. And there was one done by Deloitte just recently, which found that 65% of retail executives say that generative AI will reshape how consumers discover their products and interact with their brands. So then we went to the fourth question. So after understanding the specifics of, what matters in creating an enduring brand, we wanted to also understand, what channels they believe best delivered on them as well. And look, in the UK, it was clear that there was no single channel, but a combination that best delivered the results that they were seeking. Then you move to Australia, and the same rings true. So it was virtually a very, very similar response in that, I think it was over 70% of respondents in Australia, quoted multi-channel approach as being, the most effective. And again, look, this was probably the no-brainer question of the study in that, we all understand the importance, of multi-channel connection, and the differentiation in, objectives, roles, categories, and so forth. But delving deeper into the local results, we wanted to sort of identify, what channels were being combined with other channels. And as you can see here, very much digital, social search, we sort of grouped together, and out of home, all appeared on, almost 60% of respondents as part of the combination, followed by video, TV, AV, and then audio and radio. So there was always a combination of these particular media, and again, probably reflective of the broad range of categories and objectives and the nuances between those categories as well. Well, something that did ring through were that the major motivators in all of those quotes of using that multi-channel approach were things like high attention and high impact. And, these two key themes really sort of underpinned everything that the respondents said and really encapsulated what they wanted their brands to get, which in effect is quality reach. So then it moved us on to the final question, and as I mentioned before, it would have been remiss for us not to put something in that was specific to our channel, which is digital out of home. So the question was, in terms of digital out of home, what are the three most important attributes that you look for in the channel? So in the UK, it was again reach, which again was the number one response. It was a clear number one response, but then also the areas of impact and standout, which are obviously very closely related, were also very prominent in their responses in the market. And in Australia, reach came up as well, but it definitely didn't have the same importance that it did in the UK. And you can see there that 35% of Australian respondents mentioned reach, whereas in the UK, that figure was much, much higher at 62%. And that sort of speaks to, the evolution of the channel. It definitely would have looked years ago, without the advancements in digital out of home and, the giant leap that it has enabled us to take. Back then, we were very one-dimensional. You're buying things solely based on a lunar. You had a static image up there. We were very inflexible. So we're very limited in the role that out of home played in the market at that point in time. But you come today, and this is a bit of a word cloud with the respondents. It was difficult for us to reference them any different because there were quite a number of different roles and attributes that were highlighted and also in different combinations. But I think it just really speaks to, what digital out of home or digital has done for out of home and the expansion of the role that the channel can now play in any comm strategy. If you look at things like creativity coming through really strongly, measurement coming through strongly, provable cut through and impact, location, quality, and contextual relevance. So this word cloud more speaks to digital in general than it ever did to out of home in general. But in line, with the ongoing developments and advantages of digital out of home has more to come and is naturally capable of continuing to develop and meet the ongoing needs of brand marketers. Innovation will continue to be at the forefront, of everything that we do, as the continued development of tech and data combined with, the old world attributes of reach and presence, really make this channel set for future prosperity. So I think we've gone through this pretty quickly, which I think you will all be thanking me, giving you back some minutes on your busy Monday, no doubt. So we just wanted to leave you with the 5 takeaways that we saw from the study. In the UK, we saw that the biggest marketing challenge was winning the battle for attention. In Australia, attention was important, but it was more than that. It was about the long and the short of it as well. It was about delivering for the now, but at the same time, building enduring brands that have a better understanding about how activity works together just to drive meaningful ROI. In the UK, allocating media investment was about reach, ROI, and CPM. And Australia effectively replaced that question of how much with how well, which was just showing that we're not as focused on the cheapest, but we're also about what's best, with quality as a key consideration. In the next couple of years, AI remains a consistent challenge across both markets. You look at Australia, we have a slightly more optimistic view on how AI can be used for good and as a source for ongoing advantage, really to make content and messaging more personalised and relevant at scale. And finally, out of home as a channel has proved to be, consistently important, but never alone. It's often combined with video, social, audio, other screens. And unlike the UK, where reach was the main reason marketers used the channel, Australia showed that, digitalisation has helped us to reinvent the channel, and it's paved the way for a variety of use cases, such as audience targeting and contextual relevance, creative impact, cut through, and things like digital integration as well. So on that note, that is the end.
Christian, thank you very much. And thank you, QMS, for all your support of the independent sector. You guys are great friends. So thank you. Everyone, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to DP or any one of the QMS great people. And I'm sure they would be delighted to give you more information where needed. Just a reminder, guys, fill out the survey. I also forgot to draw the lucky door prizes for the partner bingo from Fast Future Present. So that will happen next week. There's 5 $100 prizes to be won. And everyone have a great week. Talk soon. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Sammy.
Thanks, Christian. Talk soon, mate.